Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Jack Ryan. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I don't know if it's just me, because it has been a little while since I've seen season 1 and season 2. And obviously I saw season 3, but I feel like the premieres did not I guess I don't know if because there are lesser episodes or what, but it feels like we are jumping around a lot more, bouncing between Mexico, Myanmar, and the U.S. Obviously end up being the main 3 locations, but then there's also the Nigeria situation, because it starts off with 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks into the future, we see Jack is being tortured in Myanmar, which I'm trying to think, we never get a clear picture of how long the events of every season takes place, but it's interesting to know, alright, so basically all this is going to take place roughly over the course of 3 weeks, maybe longer, but you'd feel like that's probably going to be very close to the end of the season, that whole sequence, but either way, there was an assassination in Nigeria that led to them killing the president at the time. But the problem is, it seems like the U.S. might have been behind that. Well, Jack and Wright are in their new positions, and Jack's acting director of the CIA. But the thing is, it's that looks like our equipment that was used, but we don't know if those are necessarily our operative, because there's so much that is still in play from Miller's run that it's right, their predecessor left him holding the bag. It's just a thing of he kept stuff so vague and off the books that it's hard to track down what operation is what. Was that something CIA that was still a holdover from? Because in your head, you'd think right, there'd be some operation that would be immediately shut down the moment Miller was removed, but it's once again, a lot of that stuff was already active, and he's kept it so buried in off books that it's actively happening even without him being in part. Because I saw that Michael Pena was going to be in this season, which is dope, but when he showed up and he's part of a cartel, I was whoa, I saw him kicking with Jack in them, so I was is he undercover or what? And so it seems like he is. It's connected to all of this, because Jack's trying to figure out, once again, everything's so buried so deeply and just off the books that it's hard to say which operation, whether that or not that was one of their operations or not, especially when Jack has to be in front of the Senate and ask them oh, did you have anything with what went down in Lagos? And it's I don't know if that was us for sure. And I love that one of the senators throws it in his face about everything that went down last season. It's regardless of what you did, having a good result of the ends justify the mean, because you were right. To be fair, you were on the run. You were kind of disobeyed orders. You kind of did everything you could to get onto that warship, and you were putting all this trust into a Russian operative, but it's it paid off in the end, but it was still a gamble. So it's this thing of do you see the point I'm making? And he's no. She's well, the point I'm making is you're talking about you want to change the CIA, it's kind of splintered the way it is, that, there's some stuff that's happening that you're not completely aware of. Not everything has been reined in since you've kind of taken lead of the CIA. The fact of the matter is, how could, it's kind of leading by your example, because you set the tone by, hey, I'm going to go a little rogue. It's to be fair, those circumstances were a lot different. There were extenuating circumstances. He was in a very complicated position, and it worked out in the end, but it's still, so it kind of puts Jack in this very compromising position, and he wants to change the CIA. He wants it all to kind of, fall on. He wants change. He doesn't want things to kind of remain the way they have been. But it is that little bit of a, not catch 22, but it is kind of do as I God. Do as I say, not as I do type of situation, I guess would be the best way to describe it, because it's yeah, I might have did that last season, but Jack's also kind of previously gone rogue even before season 3, but it's things severely escalated last season because everything going down, so it makes sense why that kind of get thrown in his face, and the whole situation in Mexico only makes that worse. So, Michael Pena's playing a character named Domingo Chavez, and I get, it seemed like he might, because one of the people that's part of this cartel calls him cousin, so I was like, they might actually be related, so maybe that was his into the cartel, where it's like, they might not know that, I mean, to be fair, like, CIA stuff, it's like, you're so deep covered that it's like, any obviously connection to the CIA is probably so buried deep. Like, I mean, it might be a thing of he might not even be an official CIA operative. Like, he might have never been on the books. He might not even be on the records, or maybe he is, but they're just buried so deep. But, so we're dealing with a cartel that's trying to amass all the power, working with a triad, in Myanmar. One that even, Domingo was kind of like, yo, these guys are, very, very old school. He was saying, like, because his cousin or whatever, the guy's like, oh, like, you think we're scared of, like, some Chinese triad? It's like, no, these guys aren't Chinese. They're from, like, the deepest, like, jungles of, like, Burma. It's like, they are, like, there's a mixture of different cultures and experiences. These guys are basically, like, pirates, and they're worth, like, 10 times what we are. Because for them, everything is about respect and honor above anything else, even death. Because, you know, that was even, was it Chow Fa, who's played by Louis, is it Louis Ozawa? Joe from Hunters, which I was like, oh, that's dope. His whole point was that they're taking advantage of this situation, like, because the cartels thinks they're kind of really in control, that they're going to rein this triad in and to kind of have control of them, and the triad's looking at it as like, we're using these cartels to expand our network. This is beyond just drugs. This is something else in play. Like, it gives them probably strength and power and probably a network that they could do so much more with. But at the end of the day, the Federation, the cartels are splintered. There's so many, and they're backing Marquez to, like, wrap all of them up. Like, kind of like, you the one that's going to rise to the top. I'm going to help you. But if you're not as useful, or if it's more valuable to remove you from the board, we will. So, because for them, it's like the difference between us and the cartels. They are so gunning and at each other's throats. We are all about family, and, you know, and that comes first. So that's kind of why we're more of a unified front than the cartels are. So it seems like Chow Fa might be taking a gamble on this, just like the cartel is. Because he was talking to some guy who's like, who cares as long as, like, the drugs go through, like, why get so complicated? But Chow Fa's like, right, that's why you'll never rise above your station, is because you're not trying to see the bigger picture. And he's like, yeah, but I've survived in this game a lot longer than you, so kind of don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Which speaking of chickens, that segues into that line between Domingo and that cop. I love where it's just kind of like, he's like, you're gonna have to pay me double because, like, the higher ups are really pushing me to go after one of your specific shipments. And he's like, okay, fine. He's like, okay, expect it the morning of the operation. It's like, if it doesn't come through, storm the castle, but also don't forget the chickens. And he was like, the chickens? It's like, yes, you can, if you go beyond the seeds that we're trying to feed you as a chicken, I will cut off your head in front of your fucking family. And you're like, Jesus. I doubt he had anything to do with the severed hands. He's probably just delivering those, or maybe he did do them. Who knows? But that begs the. I wonder, was that probably the hands of another cartel member? Because it was that guy he went after earlier, like when he was like he came with the box. I don't know, that he might have actually gone as far as cut off the guy's hands. I don't know. Because he did visit the guy, like, named Emilio, and then he, like, immediately went to go, I think that was Marquez he went to go see, and, like, Marquez took a picture of it and sent it to Chow Fa, which that was also a smooth operation of, like, right, you don't always keep the same, like, a SIM card, like, changing out the SIM cards and having them stashed in, like, a drawer inside of, like, I just thought that was so interesting. I was like, that makes sense. I've never seen someone utilize that tactic of, like, right, got to keep multiple SIM cards. Like, that might be a thing that's probably happened before, but in something. But I've never watched anything that's kind of utilized that, like, in the more criminal side of things. Of like, oh yeah, I have multiple SIM cards. Like, the picture of the hands was sent to a SIM card that he didn't have on him. It's like, that way I can make sure, like, that way you're never caught with any evidence on you. It's like, you know, not plausible deniability, but you kind of keep the evidence kind of hidden away. No one's going to go searching for it. So, like, even if you have your phone on you, like, I just thought that was so interesting. Like you need certain SIM cards on you at certain points in time to get certain information, and you only keep them on you when you need them. So I just think that's fascinating. And what I think so interesting too is with all this kind of going on, and obviously this episode being a lot of setup of, well, catching up with, like I said, Wright and Jack in their new positions, but also Jack and Greer trying to, fix up some form of a normal life, because we have Kathy back in Jack's life, which I saw something like say that Abby Cornish was going to return for season 4. I thought that was like, hey, we're going to meet up, but it's like, nope, between season 3 and now, like, at some point, they linked back up. But I even love when Greer, like, stopped over, he was like, oh, shit, which I was like, that's kind of meta. I was like, oh, is that, because it's like, I heard a knock at the door, it's like, oh, is it girlfriend number 2? It's like, no, it's boyfriend number 1, and it's like, oh, I'm glad that kind of worked out. It's like, yeah, he came begging, and Jack's like, I know there was no begging, but it's like, yeah, she's making me work for it. Which Greer's like, no, like, do that, like, work at it, because he's doing the same thing with his ex, his family, which we saw him having dinner. Him and his daughter are good. Him and his ex are good. But him and his son definitely have some issues. I guess it's like, right, choosing work over family was already there, and it seems like his son has a lot of resentment towards him. And I'm curious if being called Junior rubs salt in the wound. Because based on the characters, it's like, oh, James Greer Jr., so you're like, interesting. I wonder, does that cause you some issues too? Because it's like, right, just because you're here doesn't mean you're going to stay. Because it's like, our family's splintered the way it is, and here you are trying to have dinner, like, oh, everything's okay. Like, no, it doesn't make up for the time you weren't here, the complications, maybe even like, maybe in the process you hurt mom doing what you did. But, at the end of the day, Greer appreciates, what his ex Jasmine, like, it doesn't. I was curious if him and Jasmine were trying to make it work, but it doesn't seem like they were. It just seems like hey, I'm trying to make us work more together as a family, like us being together. But maybe there's a slow process of like, no, because it maybe that's their way of handling the whole, like, we're slowly, getting back together, but maybe, work and all that, because Jim is like, teetering on the private sector now, because they're kind of teasing him, and I guess with Ryan and Wright in their situations, steadying in their positions, especially because Jack could have this whole position taken from him at any moment, which makes him kind of want to step away into the more private sector potentially. So, because Jim was helping Jack read through, because he knows some of Miller's shorthand, he was able to kind of read it and figure out some of the operations. So they nailed it down, the non-operations, but they didn't know what operations were what. So the only way to figure things out is to cut off the funding. So all the money was shut down, which completely and utterly screws. So the moment Jack had brought that up to Wright, and she was like, all right, go for it, I was like, it's going to screw up everything in Mexico, isn't it? And it does, because the payment that was supposed to pay off that cop so he wouldn't storm the castle ended up not coming through because the money was shut off. So you're like, okay, so that is like a CIA funded operation and everything with Domingo and all of them. So does not seem like that's that does seem like that's I don't think it could be the same people, but I wouldn't think so, especially because if they were, you would think Domingo would have been a part of it. But what my point was, I was trying to make is, it has nothing to do with the Lagos situation, because that was one particular guy that was leading that. And so, because they caught one of those people, that's how Jack and them know, like, right, that was kind of potentially one of ours. So the other 3 potentially got away. So, but it seems like Domingo's whole operation, like, it seems like he had his whole squad with him, potentially. One did get taken down during a shootout at the docks and stuff, but still. So I think that is kind of playing into, at the very least, this might play into the Mexico, like the cartel and triad thing is probably going to be the main thing. But it's got to connect in some shape or form to the Lagos situation. But like I said, it could all just be symptoms of the larger thing of, this is the CIA thing that so many things are happening without the CIA being aware of, because Miller kept so much stuff off books and kind of hidden away that no one knows what. So, because that Lagos thing it feels like it's so disconnected. Like I said, it's all connected, but I'm curious, are other elements of that going to splinter off of, like, Jack cutting off that pay, like, shutting off down those other operations? Like, once again, that was 9 operations. We're talking about 2. So what about the other 7? Are they going to pop up and be like mini threads in all of this? Or are these 2 operations the main ones? Like, there's got to be fallout from the other, like I said, the other 5 the other 7 as well. So we'll see how they kind of operate that and how they end up, like, maybe connecting those. It might just be kind of like almost a war on multiple fronts of, like, yeah, the triad and cartel stuff is like a big one, but so is the Lagos thing. And then maybe, like I said, it will trickle down where the other 7 kind of start being fires you have to put out all around. Or maybe these are just the 2 big ones. Like the other 7 were like, they were nothing too bad, so them getting shut down is not a big issue, but maybe these 2 are the ones that are kind of at least the Mexico triad one the cartel triad one is probably like the most maybe volatile one. Maybe the Lagos one isn't as volatile, but still is. We'll have to wait and see. Because you had, was it Sanway and Chalfa, which I was wondering, like, are they related or not? Because he was like, right, if this kind of goes sideways, like, you gotta, it's going to affect you and your family and, like, your sister. He specifically said that. Made me think, like, oh, is Chalfa your dad? But it doesn't seem like that's the case. I guess that's just kind of his most loyal person, and he knows his family. Maybe, I don't know. But they're the ones that went to Mexico, because it's like, right, I need to see Marquez face to face so I can know whether or not this is worth putting all this effort into, whether he's worth keeping in play, or do I remove him from the equation like all the other cartels, essentially. Because the point was, once again, putting him at the top by, as he kind of put it, like, consolidating everything and making sure that Marquez rose to the top. But, and then there's also the situation potentially, I guess, with his wife and daughter. Like, he was going to have them, like, come, but then he had them stop. So I don't know what that was about. Like, what was he planning? Was he going to try and handle things staying on the more Mexico front, or was he trying to get them out of Myanmar because he couldn't stay? Is that why this operation's so big? Because it's supposed to be kind of your, not necessarily out, but maybe by expanding the operation, maybe you are trying to find your way out, and this was going to be your golden goose opportunity to, hey, let's set up stuff from the triad, and then I'm going to disappear afterwards, or what's at play here? Because the moment, like, stuff went down, him and Sunway got away, but he was leaving her message like, don't, like, stay put, change of plans. And before she could get on the plane, she ended up going back. So, and kind of rushing to get back. So it seems like you don't want to be out in the open, because, like I said, they might have been trying to do a runner. And it's probably like, yeah, you probably are hoping to kind of disappear, but things kind of blowing up the way they did because the cops showed up and it turned into a shootout. Like I said, Domingo lost 1 person during that operation, because it's like, right, we're all supposed to go home, but that didn't go that way. So later on, at the very end of the episode, he rolls up on Jack and is like, yo, turn Operation Pluto back on. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, yeah, you do. It's like, sadly, he doesn't. Like, Jack hasn't been in his job that long. Once again, he doesn't know what he was turning off when he shut down those operations. So it'd be nice to kind of give him some more information, but now he knows, at least has a starting point to figure out, like, okay, so because they weren't even aware, because the Mexico situation just landed on Wright's, like, lap, like, a couple hours beforehand, because even one of the senators kind of threw it. Jack had just got a couple hours preparation for it, and then, like, at that Nigerian aid fundraiser, it ended up one of the senators from that earlier in the episode had throwing it in his face about the whole situation of what's going down in Mexico, because it's like, right, I just found out about it, but you're a lot more well informed about this. So not too comfortable when someone just kind of once again just strolls up in your house. God knows how long he was waiting for you to come back home before he like put the gun to the back of your head. It's like, right, doing that to like the head of the CIA. That's why I'm like, I don't know if he's just once again so off the books, or maybe that you would go that far as potentially. I guess it's like, right, Miller's the one I took orders from, not you. You're the new guy. I don't really know you. I don't really care. Like, yeah, Jack Ryan, who cares? I got my job and my operation. This is too big of a deal for you to be the reason why this all goes kaput, because we have no idea how long he's been undercover, like how much has gone into this operation, what he's had to give up, what he's had to sacrifice, put him and his men through to make this all play out this way, a certain way, and for you to kind of come and screw it all up. Because it does feel like we're meeting other key players. Because I guess the Lagos of it all, there's that Nigerian lobbyist Ade. So like our introduction to him, especially his conversation with Wright about like kind of supporting a president, but that president like some of his nationalistic leanings you probably want to deal with. And he's like, I don't know if he was because he's like, that's how Nazi Germany handled it. I don't know if that was in reference to like this particular president. Like if you let him stay in his if you let him keep his nationalistic leanings, he might you might have like, not equating it, but it's like, right, that's how like Nazi Germany was able to kind of get to the point that it was, because leaning into its nationalistic like leanings at the time. So I don't know if that's the parallel he was making in that regard, but it's like, right, normally you leave America to kind of handle this, but they don't always do what's right. And she's like, oh, what is right in this situation? He's like, not looking away. So I don't know if he's someone we're going to be like, it feels like that's set up for him to be like, oh yeah, I'm very outspoken. I'm calling you out on what you're doing, but secretly I'm a bad guy. Like I might have had something to do with all the Lagos stuff. Like I might have like nudged and kind of pushed for that to kind of happen. I don't know. That could totally not be the case, but it's just like, I don't know. The guy rubbed me the wrong way, so we'll see. And especially because they ended up talking to the main person who's, helping out with the Nigerian aid, and her, she's the woman that obviously Jack and Kathy end up talking to, and because Kathy's, doing everything she can with the WHO and what they're trying to do. So those two are kind of linked up in that capacity. I'm curious how that's going to play out. It feels like that's going to be a pretty key plot thread in its own right. So it's just going to be interesting to see how this all kind of culminates. And like I said, where some of these plot threads that are kind of out there hanging, like you pull on it and what's going to end up happening. Like I said, is it just going to be multiple fires happening at the same time, stemming from the CIA itself, it being the fire and just spreading out to all these different branches? Or is it a thing of it all culminates in one giant? Are they going to all culminate in some way? That's what I'm so curious about. So it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good